Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Logic. This is part 3 in the video playlist. First 2 videos, you learned this stuff. You got a basic understanding of what logic is now. If you haven't seen the first 2 videos, go back and see them. In this video series, we're going to learn about deductive and inductive arguments. So in the first 2 videos, you got just a glimpse into the window of logic. But now we're going to begin to open the window and start to crawl in. And for those of you who do not know logic, this is going to be so exciting for you. It's going to open your mind to a whole new world and fill your toolbox with tools that are going to equip you to battle obstacles in your day-to-day life. Let's begin. Okay, so arguments are usually separated into deductive arguments and inductive arguments. Now, what does that mean? Well, a deductive argument is an argument in which the arguer claims that the argument is impossible to be false. So if the premises are true, then it is impossible for the conclusion not to be true. So in other words, if someone's trying to prove something to you, that's when they're giving an argument, and they claim whatever they're trying to prove to you, it's impossible for that to be false with the reasons that they give. And I'll give examples of that, and we'll do some practice questions. Now, an inductive argument is an argument in which the arguer claims that it's improbable for the conclusion to be false if the premises are true. So in other words, someone's trying to prove something to you, and they give you reasons for the conclusion, or reasons that they're going to say that their point is true. They would say that if the reasons are true, then it would be improbable that the conclusion is false. Okay, so deductive, the point that the person is trying to prove, the point necessarily follows. Now, on an inductive argument, the point that the person is trying to prove, which would be the conclusion, it probably follows. Now, a memory thing that I use, which you may want to use, is deductive for de-impossible. It's impossible reasoning. Or inductive, improbable. So see, de-impossible. And inductive, improbable. De-impossible, improbable. Yeah, so just remember that. De-impossible, improbable. De-impossible, improbable. I know it's funny. Okay, here's an example of a deductive argument. Trump is taller than Hillary. And Hillary is taller than Chelsea. Therefore, it necessarily follows that Trump is taller than Chelsea. Now you notice that is a deductive argument. Notice the conclusion here. It necessarily follows that Trump is taller than Chelsea. Also, you can recognize that it's a deductive argument from the inferential claim of the premises to the conclusion. If you don't know what that means, don't worry about it, or go back and watch video number 2. Okay, here's an example of an inductive argument. 80% of politicians are men. Hillary is a politician. Therefore, it is probable that Hillary is a man. Now notice the word probable. This is the conclusion. It's probable that Hillary is a man. This is probabilistic reasoning. Therefore, it's an inductive argument. Okay, so the inductive is probabilistic, it's probably true. In contrast to the deductive, it's necessarily true. It must be the case. It's necessarily true, or it's probably true. De-impossible and probable. 2 things that'll help you distinguish the difference between a deductive argument and an inductive argument is indicator words. Notice in the deductive argument it says it necessarily follows, and in the inductive argument it says it probably will follow. Also, the strength of the argument. Sometimes arguments will not have these indicator words, but you can see the inferential strength of the premises to the conclusion. Okay, some indicator words for deductive argument. Words like definitely, or it's certainly the case, or it's absolutely must be. Now, sometimes it may not be a deductive argument, but people will use these words to attempt to give the argument emphasis. It's a rhetorical device, so watch out for that. But these are mainly the key indicator words for deductive arguments. Now, some indicator words for inductive arguments, words like Well, it probably is the case, or it's reasonable to conclude. It possibly is the case, or it's possibly true, etc. So inductive, probabilistic reasoning, deductive arguments are necessarily reasoning. Okay, it's time for just a few practice problems. What I'll do is ask you a question, push pause on the video, and then try and answer it. Then go ahead and resume and you'll hear the answer. So let us begin. Question number 1. This is an argument. Is it deductive or inductive? Jack is a school teacher, and Jack has one sister whose name is Sally. Therefore, it certainly is the case that Sally's brother is a school teacher. Okay, is it deductive or inductive? The answer is deductive. That is right. The indicator word certainly shows that it's a deductive argument, and the conclusion does necessarily follow. Okay, question number 2. Is this argument a deductive argument or an inductive argument? Very few investors came to the presentation. Since Jill did come to the presentation, it is unlikely that Jill is an investor. Is it deductive or inductive? The answer is, that's right, it's an inductive argument. Notice the word unlikely shows probabilistic. Also, the conclusion does follow probably from the premises. Okay, next question. Is this argument a deductive argument or an inductive argument? All unmarried men are bachelors. Therefore, it necessarily follows that all bachelors are unmarried men. Inductive or deductive? The answer is, that's right, it's a deductive argument. Notice the word necessarily in the conclusion. It necessarily follows, shows that it's a deductive argument. However, this is a bad argument. There's a very well-known fallacy contained in this argument. In the future videos, you'll be able to recognize that right away. But it is a deductive argument. That's the best interpretation of it. Okay, here's another practice problem for you. Is this argument deductive or inductive? While playing blackjack, Adam lost 9 hands in a row. Therefore, the next hand he will probably win. Is it deductive or inductive argument? The answer is, that's right, it's inductive. Notice the word probable in the conclusion. You notice the conclusion by the indicator word of therefore. Therefore, the conclusion is he will probably win. Inductive argument. However, this bad argument contains a fallacy called the gambler's fallacy. You'll be able to recognize that in no time by watching the next videos. Here is another practice problem. Is this argument a deductive argument or an inductive argument? No mammals are fish. Therefore, no fish are mammals. Deductive or inductive? Well, the answer is, that's right, it's a deductive argument. And this one might have been a little bit more difficult for you because there are no indicator words indicating that it's deductive. However, the conclusion does follow necessarily from the premises. Okay, very good on the practice problems. Now for the next step. Some arguments do not contain neither inductive or deductive indicator words, or the conclusion does not follow necessarily or probably. So how do you tell if it's a deductive or inductive argument when this is the case? Well, you can tell from the form of the argument, or what style of argument, or what type of argument is it. And here are some different forms of arguments. You have deductive arguments and forms of deductive arguments, and you have inductive arguments and inductive argument forms. So deductive argument forms from math. Any argument using math or geometry or algebra, etc., and the conclusion follows based on this math is a deductive argument. For example, if x plus y equals 10 and x equals 5, it follows that y also equals 5. That's a deductive argument based on math. Similarly, an argument where the conclusion follows from a definition is also deductive. For example, John's illness is fatal. Therefore, John's illness is deadly. So the argument would be based upon the definition of fatal. Now the next three are syllogisms, and you'll be very familiar with what syllogisms are in the next video. But categorical syllogism is a deductive argument which has a specific form. It consists of two premises and one conclusion, such that all three statements begin with either all, no, or some, and the verb is are or are not. You'll be more familiar with what those are in the future. For example, a categorical syllogism would be all cats are mammals, no birds are mammals, therefore no cats are birds. Now if you don't remember these, don't worry about it right now. You'll know more about it in the future, but just quickly here, what a hypothetical syllogism is a deductive argument consisting of two premises and one conclusion. One or both of the premises is a conditional statement. If then, that's a hypothetical syllogism. For example, a hypothetical syllogism would be, if the forests are being destroyed, then certain animal species will die. Forests are being destroyed, therefore certain animal species will die. And likewise, disjunctive syllogism, if you don't remember these, don't worry about it, but a disjunctive syllogism is a syllogism with a certain form. It's based on an either or. Now an example of a disjunctive syllogism would be, either Miami is in Florida or it's in Louisiana. Miami is not in Louisiana, therefore Miami is in Florida. Okay, now inductive forms. A prediction is an argument based upon information from the past with a claim for the future. An example would be, cats are already being launched into outer space. Therefore, not too long, we're going to have cat colonies living on Mars. Okay, and an analogy, inductive argument is a conclusion that's based upon similarities between two things. And an example would be, mice are similar to rats. Mice are omnivorous creatures, therefore rats are omnivorous creatures. Now a causal inference proceeds from knowledge of a cause to knowledge of an effect, or vice versa. An example would be, this mountain has a big crater on the top. It must have been a volcano at one time. Okay, now a generalization proceeds from knowledge of a sample to a claim about the whole group. Now an example would be, 6 out of 10 people said that they would vote for Hillary Clinton. Therefore, we conclude that 60% of the population will vote for Hillary Clinton. Okay, inductive argument from authority is the conclusion is based upon the witness of an authority figure or an eyewitness. An example would be, the Surgeon General warns that smoking is dangerous, hazardous for your health. Therefore, smoking is hazardous for your health. Okay, last but not least, signs. An argument based on signs is an inductive argument that proceeds from knowledge of a sign to a conclusion about what the sign says. And a sign in regards to any kind of message produced by an intelligent being. Now an example of an argument from signs would be, the warning label on this pack of cigarettes says it's hazardous to your health. Therefore, these cigarettes are hazardous to your health. Okay, now some kind of weird little thing that I used while studying logic to help me remember this is this. MD Chad packs gas. So Dr. Chad packs gas. If you notice, M for math, D for definition, etc. And over here, packs gas. So Dr. Chad packs gas. I got weird ways of remembering things, but you can use that one, free of charge. Of course, to remember all these, I had to write it on flashcards and practice over and over and over and over and over. Okay, I hope I'm explaining this in an easy to understand way. I hope you guys are following me here, not being too bored. Let's run some practice problems and call it a day in this video. Also, if you have any suggestions on how I can improve these videos, please let me know in the comments below. Okay, and just to make things a little bit easier, the first few practice problems are just going to be for the deductive arguments, the MD Chad or Dr. Chad. Okay, practice problem number 1. What kind of deductive argument is this? Freddie suffers from arachnophobia. Therefore, Freddie has a fear of spiders. What kind of argument is this? The answer is, you're right, an argument from definition. The conclusion follows from the definition of arachnophobia. Okay, here's another practice problem for you. Why is this argument a deductive argument form? If John gets married, then John will no longer be a bachelor. John will get married, therefore John will no longer be a bachelor. Is it a definition mathematic or hypothetical argument? The answer is, that's right, it's a hypothetical syllogism. If then, if John, then this. Here's another practice problem for you. Why is this argument a deductive argument? All cats are mammals. All mammals are animals. Therefore, all cats are animals. What form does it have? A definition, a disjunctive syllogism, or a categorical syllogism? The answer is, that's right, the argument is a categorical syllogism. Here is another practice problem. What type of argument form is this? Either Susan is from USA or Susan is from Australia. Susan is not from Australia, therefore Susan is from the USA. Is it a hypothetical syllogism, a disjunctive syllogism, or an argument from definition? The answer is, that's right, it's a disjunctive syllogism. The first premise is a statement that's an either or, and the second premise eliminates one of the alternatives. All right, here's another practice problem for you. What type of argument form is this deductive argument? Two triangles fit into square A. Therefore, the area of both triangles is less than the area of square A. Is this a mathematical argument, a categorical syllogism, or a hypothetical syllogism? The answer is mathematical argument. That's correct. The conclusion depends upon geometry. Okay, very good on the deductive practice arguments. Now let's go into inductive forms. Remember the prediction, analogy, causal inference, generalization, authority, and signs, the packed gas? Let's do some practice problems of them, then we'll be finished. Okay, number one. What type of argument or inductive argument form is this? The first card I chose was a diamond. The second card I chose was a diamond. And the third card I chose was a diamond. So the entire deck of cards are diamonds. Is it an argument from analogy, causal inference, or generalization? The answer is, that's right, it's an argument of generalization. It's an argument from a sample and claimed about the entire group. Here's another practice problem for you. What type of inductive argument is this? Flying taxis are already being planned. Flying taxis have already been tested. Therefore, flying taxis will be used by the public soon. Is an argument from authority, an argument from signs, or an argument from a prediction? The answer is, that's right, it's an argument from a prediction. It's an argument based on knowledge of the past to a claim of the future. Here is another practice problem. What type of inductive argument is this? The eyewitness said that the bank robber had brown hair. Since the eyewitness has good vision, we conclude that the bank robber has brown hair. Is this an argument from signs, authority, or analogy? The answer is, you got it, it's an argument from authority. The conclusion is based on an authority, the eyewitness. Here is another practice problem. What type of inductive argument is this? Sally and Cindy both like suspense novels. Cindy just loved the latest suspense novel. Therefore, Sally should also like the latest suspense novel. Is this an argument from analogy, authority, or causal inference? The answer is, you're right. It's an argument based on an analogy. The conclusion depends on the similarities between Sally and Cindy. Here's another practice problem. What type of inductive argument is this? Samantha started to cry after she received her report card. So Samantha probably got a bad grade on her report card. Is this an argument from authority, or causal inference, or an argument from signs? The answer is, yes, that's right, a causal inference. The conclusion depends on the claim that a bad grade caused Samantha to cry. Okay, here's a final practice problem. What type of inductive argument is this? The price tag says $25. So the logical thing to conclude is that the item cost $25. Is this an argument from signs or authority or a prediction? The answer is, that's right, the argument's an argument from signs. The price tag is a sign. Well, great job, ladies and gentlemen. You made it through it. In this video, you learned about arguments can be into two categories, deductive and inductive. Deductive is impossible reasoning or conclusion necessarily follows. Inductive is improbable to be false, that the conclusion probably follows. You've also learned how to identify these. Deductive indicator words, definitely, certainly, absolutely. Inductive indicator words, probably, reasonably, it's plausible, and it's possible. You've also learned about forms, deductive forms of arguments. The Dr. Chad packs gas. Deductive arguments from math, definition, categorical, hypothetical, etc. Inductive, these here. That's a great job. Thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video, and that's all, folks.